Hi, in this session, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss about Governor Generals. Okay, so I'll be starting the discussion on Governor Generals. Okay, so later we will discuss about the Governor Generals, Viceroys, everything in the chronological order. So here I'm going to start with the history of Governor Generals. So to start with, basically I need to discuss 1773 Regulating Act, because in 1773 Regulating Act, through that only the post of Governor General of Bengal was created. Okay, so we will be starting with Governor General of Bengal. Okay, till then governors were there in the three presidencies, Bombay, Madras and Calcutta. Okay, so governors were there and they are independent in their own matters, that means internal matters. Now Governor General of Bengal post was created. I'll be discussing about the act, but let me give you a quick overview of what we are going to discuss in the next coming sessions. Like in 7-8 sessions I'll be completing all the Governor Generals in the chronological order. Okay, so Governor General of Bengal post was created in 1773 through Regulating Act, and you can see after 60 years in 1833 there was a Charter Act. Okay, so through Charter Act of 1833 this Governor General of Bengal post will be abolished and instead Governor General of India post will be created. Okay, so you can see Governor General of India. Then one point is here, the first Governor General of Bengal was Lord Warren Hastings. Okay, Warren Hastings. And the first Governor General of India was Lord William Bentinck. Okay, last Governor General of Bengal, if you ask me, that is also Lord William Bentinck, because during his time only this act came. So when the act came, the post of Governor General of Bengal abolished and Governor General of India post was created. So obviously he became the first Governor General of India and the last Governor General of Bengal. Then after 1857 revolt, you can see the post of Viceroy is created. Okay, so one point that you need to remember is when the post of Viceroy was created, unlike in 1833 Charter Act, when in 1833 Charter Act, when the post of Governor General of India was created, the post of Governor General of Bengal was abolished. But here, when the post of Viceroy was created, the post of Governor General of India was not abolished and it continued. And you can see after that the Governor General of India and Viceroy both will be the same person. You can see Lord Lytton will be Governor General of India at the same time Viceroy. Lord Ripon will be Governor General of India and Viceroy. Curzon, etc. Okay. So if you ask me who was the first Viceroy, that is Lord Canning. He was the Governor General of India during the revolt time, and after that when the Better Government for India Act was passed, he became the first Viceroy. But the post of Governor General of India continued. Okay, and that continued. Okay, so you should not have any confusion with respect to this. Now then, what is the difference? See, as a Viceroy, let's suppose this is British India. India comprised of some more areas like right, princely states and all, right. So this is big India or entire India. So as a Viceroy, he is the representative of entire India. That means including British India and princely state. That's what Viceroy. He is the representative to Queen of entire India, which comprises of both princely state and British India. Okay, so as a Viceroy, he is the representative. Now as a Governor General, he is in control of British India only. He is in charge of governance in British India. That's the difference that you need to understand. But both will be the same person. Okay, so we are going to discuss all those things in detail in the chronological order, so you will understand in a much better way. But I have just given you a quick overview of what we are going to discuss. So let me start off with Regulating Act, and through which the post of Governor General of Bengal was created. Okay, so Regulating Act of 1773. Now the important point that I need to discuss under this act is basically with respect to the Governor General of Bengal only. See, till then there were governors in Bombay, Madras and Bengal. Now the Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Okay, so Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal. Okay, now this Governor General of Bengal is there, but okay, so the first point, Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal, and along with him they introduced 4 council members. Now if you look at this act, as its name indicate, it is basically to regulate. Okay, now who's going to regulate whom is the question. See, the British Parliament is going to regulate the affairs of East India Company in India, and for that only this act was passed. And you can see in the course of time many such acts were passed, and the control over East India Company keep on increasing through every act. And finally in 1857 the British Parliament directly took over the control of India. Okay, so Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal along with 4 council members. Now the way the Parliament is going to regulate is through this 4 members. That's what you need to understand. So you need to know who is appointing the Governor General and who is appointing these 4 members. See, the Governor General is actually the head of the company. So the head of the company is actually appointed by the company only. So the appointment of Governor General of Bengal is done by East India Company. But the appointment of these 4 members is done by the Parliament. Okay, so British Crown or the Parliament is doing the appointment of these 4 members, and through these 4 members only you are controlling the affairs of East India Company in India. Now how you are controlling? Because see, any decision if you want to take, the Governor General of Bengal, if you want to take any decision, you need to get the support of a majority. Okay, so decisions are implemented on the basis of majority. Now the council comprises of 4 members. So Governor General of Bengal plus 4, so total 5. Now majority means 3. So you need the support of 3. So if the Governor General want to implement any decision, so Governor General want to implement any decision, he need the support of minimum 2. He need the support of minimum 2. Okay. But what happened is, right from day 1, 3 out of these 4 gentlemen who came were against the Governor General. We'll discuss about it. Okay. See, so you need to know who was the first Governor General. That in fact I have discussed with you. The first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings. Okay, so the first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings, appointed by the company. Now you need to know the 4 members also, right? So the 4 members were Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, George Monson, and John Clavering. See, since these are the first 4 council members, you can always expect a question from these 4 members. Just like who among the following were the members of first council? Okay, so if you get a question and options like, see, like this 1, 2, 3, okay, and instead of John Clavering, I may write John Shore. Okay, and I give you options like 1, 2, 4, answer option A. B says 1, 2, 3. C says 1 and 4. Okay, and or 1 and 2. D says all the above. So this will actually make you confused because John Shore is a very familiar name to you. We will be discussing about permanent settlement under Lord Cornwallis. So the person who is assisting Lord Cornwallis is John Shore. And since permanent settlement is a very important topic, you will be learning in detail about that. And in fact, we will also discuss in detail about that. So this name was very familiar to you. So you may mistakenly believe that this person was also there in the council. Okay, so you may pick an answer choice where John Shore is there. So easy one is answer option A, because in only one option you will find or all of the above. Okay, so whatever, if you pick A or if you pick D, okay, both are incorrect. So if you need to pick the correct answer, you should be knowing the 4 members, and you should be very clear that it's not John Shore. In fact, it was John Clavering. Okay, so that's the way you will get the question, and that's how you need to expect a question. Okay, so what we have discussed is Governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal with 4 council members. Decisions are taken on the basis of majority. Governor General was appointed by the company because he is the head of the company, and the 4 members are appointed by the Crown because through the 4 members only you are going to control the affairs of East India Company in India. And the first Governor General was Warren Hastings, and the 4 members were Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, George Monson, and John Clavering. Okay, and the problem with this act was, I already told you, the decisions were implemented on the basis of majority, and if Warren Hastings want to implement any of his decision, he need to get the support of minimum 2, because he need 3 out of 5, right? But right from day 1, 3 out of these 4 gentlemen was always against Warren Hastings. And interestingly, the reason that they are saying, or the reason was, when they came from England, when they arrived in India, they were not welcomed properly by the Governor General. So for that reason, he could not implement any of his decision, and that problem is going to be solved through another act that came in 1784. We'll be discussing again in this session itself, Pitt's India Act. Okay, so we'll be discussing about that, and we'll also see how the problem is going to be solved in that act. So I hope this point is clear for you. There's the first point and the most important point with respect to Regulating Act of 1773. And for us, as far as we are concerned, we are interested in this point because we are going to start our discussion on the Governor Generals and Viceroys of India. Okay, so one more point if you need to remember, because that is also a fact from which you can actually expect a UPSC question. The first, the second provision was a Supreme Court has to be established. Okay, a Supreme Court has to be established. Now, this act we have seen already, that was in 1773. But the Supreme Court was established in 1774 at Calcutta. Okay, so this difference you should remember. The act is in 73 and the provision also came in the act, but the court established in 74. Now, one more point is very important point. This Supreme Court, you should not confuse it with the modern day Supreme Court. That we will discuss when we discuss about 1935 Government of India Act. Okay, this Supreme Court is established only for the trial of Europeans. There is no connection to the modern day Supreme Court. Okay, so this Supreme Court is established only for the trial of Europeans, because when they came to India, now more and more Britishers are coming to India, and the Indian laws and British law or the English laws are totally different. And in their point of view, in the Indian laws are completely orthodox, very traditional, okay, uncivilized, etc. So they want to try their cases in their law. They don't want to try their cases under Indian law. So this Supreme Court was established only for that purpose, for the trial of Europeans. Very important point. The Supreme Court, which was established in 1774 at Calcutta, was only for Europeans and for the trial of their cases. Okay, and the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was Justice Elijah Impey. Justice Elijah Impey. Okay, now you understood the post of Governor General of Bengal was created, and I told you Warren Hastings was the first Governor General of Bengal. Now we are going to start our discussion on Governor Generals and Viceroys of India. And when you start our discussion, we need to start with the first Governor General of Bengal, that was Lord Warren Hastings. Okay, so we are going to start our discussion with Lord Warren Hastings. Lord Warren Hastings. His time period, if you see, 1773 to 1785. 1773 when the Regulating Act was passed, till 1785. Now, regarding time period or tenure, you need to remember one thing. There is no fixed tenure for Governor Generals. So you can see Warren Hastings is there for 12 years. Next, when you see Lord Cornwallis, his time period is from 1786 to 93 for 7 years. And later also Lord Cornwallis will come for few months. So the tenure can be few months to few years. Okay, so there is no fixed tenure. That's one point. Now, when you discuss about Lord Warren Hastings, there was a question this year. We'll be discussing about that also. But the point is, the chances of prelims questions are rare from this topic, but still you can get questions. We'll be discussing few points, but there is a possibility of mains question. Okay, and see, the reason is Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period. Most of the historians understood or interpret in that way. Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period. Okay, so you will get a question. Warren Hastings period in history is known as trial and error period. Discuss, comment, critically analyze, or whatever it is. We are going to answer this question. Okay, so the point that you need to understand is you need to know the context first. Why it is called as trial and error? Because he made a lot of trials and many mistakes. That's what you mean by trial and error, right? So now, before you answer those attempts that he made and what were the mistakes that he committed, you need to know the context in which he came. Okay, so the first point, or when you try to understand the context, I told you already he was the Governor General of Bengal. And Bengal, if you see at that time, it's such a huge territory which comprises of Bangladesh, present day Bangladesh, which in itself is a country, then Bengal, Bihar, Orissa. Okay, such a huge state. Okay, so he is actually administering such a big area, and if you compare it with the country from which he is coming from a very small country, England. If you compare with the area that he is controlling, this much may be the difference. And that too, he don't have any administrative experience, right? We have already said that he was the head of the company. So he's in fact a businessman. He don't have any administrative experience. Okay, so a businessman is going to control a huge area, and that is much larger than the country from he is coming with no administrative experience. So he's bound to make mistake, right? And now when you look at this area he is administering, see, from the country is coming, see, if you see, there is one religion, one language, there is not much diversity, people are speaking the same language, there is no religious differences, right? And the area is very small, there is no such concept of casteism, right? But if you look at this area, now he is controlling Bengal, people are speaking different language. Firstly Bengali language, then Hindi language, then Oriya language. So there are divisions based on language. Then you can see religious difference. Muslims are majority in the eastern part, okay, and Hindus are majority in the other part. So there are problems related to that also, okay. So the laws are also different for them. We'll be discussing about that. So administrative problems will come in this way. Language, religion. Again, if you look at Hindu society or Hindu system, okay, it was again divided on the basis of caste: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Okay, and untouchables or the avarnas, and this person was never heard of caste system. Okay, so India is such a diverse country with all these problems. Now he is going to address all these problems for him, right? Caste differences there, religious differences there, language differences there. Now area is big and huge compared to their country itself. Okay, and he don't have any administrative experience, he's just a business person. Now he is going to administer such a huge territory with all these differences and diversities. So it's not only Warren Hastings, any person who's going to come in this situation is bound to make mistakes, and that's a mistake Warren Hastings also did. We'll see what are the trials or attempts that he made for the administration and what are the mistakes that he committed. Now see, if you need to administer a particular area, two important things need to be taken care. One is the revenue collection. Without revenue, you can't do anything, right? Second is the legal system. You need to have a complete idea about the legal system, or you need to have a proper legal system. So these are the two things that you must be very careful, or you need to have in control with when you're going to administer a particular area. But when it comes to revenue, they have no much idea about the revenue collection or revenue system in India. See, if you see England, industrialization is there, so most of the revenues are coming from industries then, okay. But when it comes to India, most of the revenues are from agriculture, not much industries, right? And Mughals had their own system like Lagan, you all know about that, but Britishers have no idea about that. So they faced a lot of problem. They don't know how to collect revenue. That's the biggest problem. Okay, so they don't know how to collect revenue, they don't know how much to be collected as revenue. Okay, they don't even know from whom you will collect revenue, because in Indian setup it is not the actual owner who may be cultivating. The actual cultivator may be a peasant or the tenant or the sharecropper or the subtenant, etc. They may be different, they may not own the land. So the question is whether you should tax the owner of the land or you should tax the person who's cultivating in the land. Okay, so from whom you should take money or you should collect tax. Next question is who will collect tax? Whether a British official will be appointed to collect tax like in Riotwari system we are going to discuss later, or the owner of the land, the Zamindar, will be appointed to collect the tax like in permanent settlement and the quinquennial settlement that we are going to discuss. So they have confusion with this also. Most importantly, again, when to collect tax. Whether you collect the tax before the sowing or after cultivation. See, two ways you can collect tax. So you allow them to cultivate. After the cultivation, you can see how much produce is there, and on the basis of you can charge a particular amount as a tax. Or before sowing itself, you can see the land and you can calculate the amount of tax and you can charge them. Okay, so these are the problem they faced in revenue collection side. Now they are trying many experiments and they are trying to solve it out through many experiments. We will study about that. Various land revenue settlements like quinquennial settlement, which is started by Lord Warren Hastings, then permanent settlement you can see under Lord Cornwallis, and then you can see Riotwari settlement which was started by Munro and Reed, and then you can see Mahalwari settlement by Holt Mackenzie. Okay, so all these things we'll discuss in that order, in that chronology. We will not miss out anything. So let me now continue with Warren Hastings. Then if you look at legal system, see, again there are issues when it comes to legal system. So obviously when you see legal system, there are criminal cases and civil cases. Now when you see criminal cases, before British, Mughals had their own system. Their laws were based on Islamic laws, okay. So it was the rules set by the Turks. Okay, now in Mughal system, the criminal cases, if you see, the laws were partly Islamic and partly local, not completely Islamic. Okay, so there are a lot of local variation, but irrespective of community, it is applied. Okay, but there are local variation, but for Hindus and Muslims, the same law is applied in criminal cases. But when it comes to civil cases, okay, Hindu laws are and Muslim laws are different, and not only different, they are poles apart. And that also created a lot of problem. Now when I say civil cases, what do you mean? I'm talking about laws regarding marriage, property, divorce, adoption, etc. So if you look at the civil cases, it's very different from Muslim point of view and Hindu point of view. Okay, so for example, if you take property law, okay, so if you take property related law, in Hindu system, they are following Manusmriti, and in Manusmriti what is written is that the property will be passed on to son. From the father it will be passed on to son. That means there is nothing given to the daughter except in the form of Stridhan, which was given during the time of marriage as dowry. Okay, but there is nothing else is given to the daughter. Now again, even though there is some mention that property will be passed on to son, there is no idea that which son is going to get how much, etc. Okay, whether the elder son or the younger son or the person who is taking care of the parents, or nothing is mentioned in Manusmriti. But when it comes to Islam, in Quran, everything is clearly mentioned in this respect. It's like how much to be given for elder son, how much to be given for younger son, how much to be given for daughter. Everything is discussed in Quran, and in fact father had no role to write his will in Islam, especially if it was ancestors' property. If the father got this property from his father, the father don't have any right to write his will, and this property will be automatically passed on to the sons and daughter in the proportion which is mentioned in Quran. Okay, but if it is his own property, if he made it on his own time, in his own work, okay, then he have some role to write his will. Okay, so that's the idea. So basically I want to discuss the difference between these two, okay, Hindu system and Islamic system. Now again, if you look at marriage, okay, so if you see marriage among Hindus, marriage is considered as sacrosanct, okay, something which is very divine and religious. That means when you married once, you have to live a life long, okay, and you have to keep that relation for a long time. There is no concept of separation, or there is no concept of divorce, okay, and you can see divorce was incorporated only through Hindu Marriage Act later after the independence, okay. But when you see Islam, it's like a social contract, okay. Marriage is a social contract, okay, so it's a contract which is made between the husband and wife, or the bride's father and the groom or the husband, okay. So that's how it is different. One, it is sacrosanct, and here it is social contract. So this contract you can break at any time. If you are not satisfied, there is a possibility of divorce, and that's what you call as triple talaq, okay. But you know, this right is not only given to the male, it is also given to the female. There is an instrument for that which is opposite to triple talaq. That's what we call as khul. The problem is, even most of the Muslims also don't know about this. According to this, if a female, she don't want to live with her husband, she can seek divorce from the husband through khul. Okay, so I hope this is clear for you. Now again, if you look at divorce, okay, so we have discussed about marriage, property, divorce law. Again, if you look at adoption law, okay, among Muslims, adoption was not considered valid. So you can see only Hindus are adopting. Now when we discuss about doctrine of lapse later, okay, during Dalhousie time, or when we discuss about 1857 revolt, I'll tell you that there are three types of states, and out of those three categories of states, only in one category of state this doctrine of lapse was applicable. It was not applicable in the states where Mughals were there or the Muslims were there. The reason is, or if you see the states which were annexed under doctrine of lapse, you cannot see Muslim states. Okay, all those states which were annexed were Hindu states, because adoption is not valid already among Muslims. So there is no need of such laws for Muslim states. And that law, doctrine of lapse, the concept was applicable only one category of states which were created under British Charter. Okay, so you can see three different categories of states, like the states which were either part of Mughals or Marathas or were paying tax to them. Okay, one category of state. Or the states which were either part of Mughals or Marathas and they were not paying tax also. Okay, so completely independent state. Second category that I have discussed is they are not part of Mughals and Marathas, they are paying tax. So in these two categories of states, doctrine of lapse was not applicable. Only those states which were created under British Charter, doctrine of lapse was applicable. And you see the states like Satara, Jabalpur, Bhagat, Nagpur, etc. Okay, Jhansi, etc. were annexed under doctrine of lapse, which were coming in the third category of state. Okay, we'll be discussing about this in detail when we discuss about Dalhousie and when we discuss about 1857 revolt. Okay, now, so you understood that Warren Hastings, or in general for the administration, they faced two important problems, one on the legal side and the other on the revenue side. Now, to solve this problem, the only way is basically you need to study India, or you need to understand India, and you need to understand about the revenue system and the legal system which is practiced in India and go according to that, or make some necessary changes in that. Okay, that's the only way. Now, how can you understand India? Go back to the tradition, see the textbooks. Okay, so the travelogues or the literatures, okay, the old archaeological excavations. In all these you can get some information regarding legal and the revenue aspect. Okay, so with respect to legal, you should study Manusmriti, you should understand Quran, you should study all these things so you can understand Hindu law and Islamic law. That is one side. To study revenue system, you should again read all the textbooks related to this. Okay, now the idea is basically to study the custom, culture, etc. of India. So you can see here, legal side, you have two issues, predominantly in civil cases, okay, and to an extent in criminal cases also, okay. But revenue, when to collect revenue, how much to collect revenue, who will collect revenue, okay. So all these again were the problem. So you need to study India. So during this time, if you see, there was an attempt to study India, and you can see a new branch of knowledge which is known as indology emerged during this time with the purpose of studying India. Okay, so the word indology literally means study India. So how you are going to study this? You can study through the travelogues of the kings, archaeological excavations, convert the all religious textbooks to English like Manusmriti, etc. Okay, so you are going to study the custom, culture, etc. of India or the Indian tradition. And you can see the first such translation happened during 1776 under Code of Jendu laws. Okay, so Jendu Code. So basically, Manusmriti was translated to Code of Jendu laws or Jendu Code. So if I ask you what is Jendu Code, it is a translation of Manusmriti. So Manusmriti codified in 1776, okay, under Jendu laws. Now in 1781, you can see, to understand Islamic laws and systems, a madrasa was established at Calcutta known as Calcutta Madrasa, and this question was asked, okay, known as Calcutta Madrasa. The question was asked like this: Calcutta Madrasa was established by whom? Lord Warren Hastings is the answer. Okay, so in 1781, Calcutta Madrasa. So when you study like this: indology. So the first effort was Code of Jendu laws. Okay, so next question can be related to this. So when they ask this, you can ask about this also. In fact, this was also asked earlier. Okay, and again, one of the very important point that I need to discuss is, under indology itself, in 1784, Asiatic Society of Bengal was established. Okay, so Asiatic Society of Bengal was established at Calcutta by William John. Okay, by William John. So the objective is basically to promote indology. Okay, so in general it is for the study of Eastern society, okay, Oriental studies, to promote Oriental studies, but to be more precise or to be particular, it is the study of India. Okay, so the objective of Asiatic Society of Bengal is to promote Oriental studies, study of East. Now if you see, during this time there are many scholars emerged. Okay, so there are many scholars. Again, if you look at this, two types of scholars were there. On one side, government sponsored scholars, okay, and on the other side, freelance scholars. Okay, the objective of these two people will be entirely different. See, government sponsored scholars, their purpose, and freelance scholar, their purpose will be entirely different. So government sponsored scholars, they want to study about India for the purpose of administration. So they want to justify their role in India. On the other side, you can see they are studying out of interest. They don't want to justify anybody's role in India. Okay, they will write exactly what it was. Okay, so here you can see government sponsored scholars, they maligned India and Indian tradition completely. They were writing totally bad about Indian tradition, and they justified their role in India, and they are saying that Britishers' role in India is basically to civilize India or to modernize India from uncivilized or from the tradition. So they try to justify their role in India, and this is what the self-professed notion of white man's burden. Okay, so what was white man's burden concept? India is very traditional, orthodox and uncivilized. The Britishers' role in India is basically to civilize India or to modernize India. So the point is, they maligned India. Okay. On the other side, you can see the freelance scholars, again Britishers only. Okay, so during this time the studies were conducted by Britishers, not Indians, and that's an irony. So it's actually, there is a famous saying that the Britishers came to India and they taught us who were we, what we are, etc. All those things. Okay, then you can see later Indian historians are coming out with a lot of good stuffs and good explanations, but we'll have to discuss that later. But here, see, freelance scholars, they are studying out of interest, and they have seen India and India's tradition with great appreciation and honor. Okay, so they highlighted the glorious past, and they highlighted the tradition with great honor and appreciation. So whatever it is, on one side they maligned India, on the other side they appreciated India's culture and tradition and customs. But whatever it is, the point is, it is the British who studied India and who came to India and who taught us who were we, etc. Okay, so I hope this point is clear. So that's about indology. Now let's move on to Lord Warren Hastings again. We were actually discussing that question. Warren Hastings' period in history is known as trial and error period. Discuss, comment, critically analyze, etc. Right? So see, he have done some experiments in revenue collection. So that's what we call as quinquennial settlement. Initially he did a 5-year settlement. 5-year settlement. Now we need to understand what is this 5-year settlement and why it was a failure and what the change he did. Okay, so that's what we need to understand here. See, it's like this. You will be collecting revenue from the person who's going to undertake the cultivation. Okay, so you'll be collecting the revenue from the cultivator. Now who will be collecting? The owner of the land, or the zamindar will be collecting. Okay, so the peasant will be paying the tax to the zamindar, and the zamindar will pay it to the state. This was the situation. This is the idea. Now how the zamindar is selected, that's the question. See, the state will come up with a notification that we are going to select the zamindars. Okay, the advertisement. So the aspiring zamindars will come and contest. Okay, so there will be a bidding process, obviously. So what will happen is, they desperately want to become zamindars, because zamindars used to get a lot of privileges. They in fact enjoy the power of policing also, because you can see in 1793 through police reforms only police officials and police stations were established. Till then zamindars enjoyed the power of policing also. So people desperately want to become zamindars. So during the time of bidding, what they do is they will quote unrealistic amount. Okay, so let's suppose from a particular piece of land, let's suppose that maximum tax that you can collect is 1 lakh. I'm taking a hypothetical number. But what you do is, you know that the maximum is 1 lakh, but you will quote a very, very, very unrealistic amount, like maybe 5 lakh. Okay, and you yourself know that you are not able to realize this 5 lakh, but he was desperate to get the zamindariship. Okay, so what will happen is, when you quote this highest amount, this person will get the zamindariship. Okay, now this 5 lakh rupee is what he caught during bidding. So he need to pay 5 lakh, and this contract is for 5 years. So in 5 years you need to pay 5 lakh. So the state do not have any power to evict him before 5 years. Okay, he just need to pay it before in 5 years. So he may collect 20,000 first year, 20,000 next year, 20,000 third year, like that maximum. So he will get 1 lakh. Okay, now after 5 years, if the zamindar is paying the 5 lakh, he can continue. If he is not paying 5 lakh, that is the amount that he caught, he will not be able to continue. He will be evicted. That's the idea. Now here he collected 1 lakh. Okay, he himself was very much aware that he cannot collect 5 lakh, but he caught 5 lakh during the time of bidding to get the zamindariship to in any way. Okay, so he got 1 lakh. Now if you don't pay 5 lakh, you lose the zamindariship. If you pay 1 lakh, then also you use zamindariship. If you don't pay anything, then also you lose the zamindariship. So what he do is, he collected 1 lakh, he enjoyed zamindariship for 5 years. Okay, now he may not even pay this 1 lakh also. He may pay 20,000, and he will tell the government that I was able to collect only 20,000. Now who is losing here. Peasant is not getting any advantage because peasant is paying the tax. State is expecting 5 lakh, but state is getting 20,000. So all the plans and the policies that the state planned by thinking about this 5 lakh, now they cannot implement. So that is a problem state is facing with respect to this revenue collection method. The reason is when they promise a huge amount during the time of bidding, but they cannot pay even 10% of it. That's the reality. Okay, so state could not implement any of its plan and decision from the revenue. There is no idea about how much you will get. Okay, so what happened is, after this was from 72 to 77, quinquennial settlement. Now after 77, what they do is, instead of 5 years, they change it to 1 year. But the root cause remain the same. They are not changing anything. It is like peasant will pay to zamindar, zamindar will pay to state. The election or the selection of zamindar is done in the same way, but the contract is for 1 year. So if in 1 year you are not paying, you will be evicted. Same thing will happen here also. During the time of bidding, to get the zamindariship, he will got the maximum amount. He will enjoy the zamindariship for 1 year, and whatever he collected, he will keep it with himself, and he won't pay. He will lose the zamindariship, and it will continue. And this problem is solved only in 1793 through permanent settlement. We'll be discussing about that also. Okay, that we'll discuss under Lord Cornwallis. And when we discuss about that, I'll also discuss about Ryotwari and Mahalwari settlement. Okay, so as of now, I hope this is clear for you. So what is the root cause? Root cause is the way you select the zamindar. Okay, so that is not solved. Okay, and this is one of the problem that you can write when we discuss about the particular answer. Now, a very important fact with respect to Warren Hastings is, see, not that important from exam point of view. He was the only Governor General who was tried for a murder case. Okay, there was a Bengali trader whose name was Nunda Kumar. He accused Warren Hastings in a case of corruption. Okay, he accused Warren Hastings of corruption case, but later this person was hanged in a fabricated case, and in that case Warren Hastings was tried, but without any evidence, lack of evidence, he was left free. Okay, nothing had happened to him. That's it. Now, the most important point again that I need to discuss under Warren Hastings is 1784 Pitt's India Act. So I told you when we discussed about 1773 Regulating Act, there was problem. Okay, so to implement any of the decision, you have to get the support of majority, and that problem is going to be solved through Pitt's India Act. So if you go for a quick recap of what we have discussed in 1773 Regulating Act, the post of Governor General of Bengal was created, and the Governor General of Bengal was appointed by the company. 4 council members were also introduced. They were appointed by the parliament, and through these 4 members, the company is going to be controlled by the parliament. First Governor General was Warren Hastings. 4 members were Richard Barwell, Philip Francis, George Monson, and John Clavering. Then we have seen the decisions are taken on the basis of majority, and Warren Hastings was not able to implement any of his decision because 3 out of these 4 gentlemen is always against Warren Hastings, right? And that problem is solved here. Okay, second provision of the 1773 Regulating Act was a Supreme Court has to be established, and the Supreme Court was established in 1774 at Calcutta for the trial of Europeans. And the first Chief Justice was Justice Elijah Impey. Now here, when we discuss about Pitt's India Act, we have to understand the provisions, and we have to also see how the problem of 1773 Regulating Act is solved through Pitt's India Act, right? So it is actually named after British PM Pitts. Okay, that everybody know. The first provision was that the new executive council comprised of 4 members. See, earlier the executive council comprised of 5 members, Governor General plus 4 members. Now this was reduced to 4. How this was reduced to 4? Governor General plus 3 members. So effectively what happened is 4 council members were reduced to 3. Okay, so total 4. That means 1 plus 3, Governor General and 3 members. Again, decisions were taken on the basis of majority. See, if you see here, 3 out of 5 was the majority. If you see here, 3 out of 4 is the majority. Now, to get 3 out of 5 is easy than 3 out of 4. Okay, but still you are saying that the problem is solved. How? Let's see. Now here there is a possibility of equality. That means 2 and 2. There is a possibility like this, right? That means, what is this case? Governor General is getting the support of 1 person and the other 2 on the other side. Okay, so here Governor General got the support of at least 1 person. Now in this case of equality, Governor General will have the final say. That means Governor General will have a veto power. That means effectively Governor General will have 2 votes. So you need to get the majority, that means 3 out of 4. In that, Governor General have a 2 vote. Now only Governor General is supporting 1 and entire other 3 were against him, means he cannot do anything. But if Governor General is getting the support of at least one person, okay, then he have the final say. That means he is getting 3 now, because he himself have a veto power or 1 extra vote. I hope you understood this, and this is how the problem is solved. Now this is the way you need to understand. Without understanding, so you will see now Regulating Act it was 4, now it is reduced to 3. Again in Charter Act of 1833 it will be again increased to 4. So you'll have confusion. You need to know why it is reduced to 4. This is the reason why it is reduced to 4. Now why it is increasing to 5 again? We'll see that. Okay. So Executive Council 5 were reduced to 4, 1 plus 3. Decision on the basis of majority again, but the Governor General got the final say in case of equality. So to get equality, Governor General just need the support of one person. Okay, now if no one is supporting, you cannot do anything. But if you get support of one person, you can implement whatever you want. Okay. The second clause, see, I told you through every act, the control over East India Company keeps on increasing, right? Now in the second provision of this, you can see a board of control in England was established. Okay, a new board in England was established known as Board of Control. The objective is basically to control the affairs of East India Company in India, and this Board of Control comprised of 6 members. Okay, so keep in mind this Board of Control was sitting in England and regulating the affairs of East India Company in India with 6 members. And later when we discuss about the Better Government Act of India was passed in 1857 after the revolt. Okay, I'll tell you this board will be abolished, Board of Control, because East India Company is no more. British Parliament has directly taken the control, so you don't want any Board of Control. Then I tell you a Secretary of State was created. We'll discuss about that. Okay, so here Board of Control was established in England with 6 members to regulate or control the affairs of East India Company in India. I hope this is clear. So you can see the regulation keeps on increasing. Third point is about recall. See, I told you already. Here also, the Governor General is appointed by the company and 3 members were appointed by the Crown. The earlier also in Regulating Act of 1773 also it was the same. Governor General is appointed by the company because he is the head of the company, and the 4 members were appointed by the Parliament. Here also it is the same. So, if the 4 members were appointed by the Crown, you can call this 4 members. In the second case, 3 members. So, you can call back the 3 members. But the Governor General is appointed by the company and he is the head of the company, so British Parliament had no say over the appointment of the Governor General of Bengal. But here they introduced a provision of recall, through which if you are not satisfied with the Governor General of Bengal, even if you are appointed by the company, there is a provision of recall. Okay, the British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General. It can be the 3 members, it can be the Governor General also. I hope this point is very clear. So Pitt's India Act of 1784, 3 points is what you need to be very clear about. The first point, Governor General plus 3 member. Earlier it was Governor General plus 4 member. Why it is reduced? To solve the problem of previous case. Okay, that we have already discussed. Second, a board in England was established known as Board of Control with 6 members to regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. Third, the provision of recall. British Parliament can recall any of its official, including the Governor General, even though the Governor General is appointed by the company. Okay, so these are the points that I need to discuss under Lord Warren Hastings. So I hope the discussion is clear for you. In the next lecture, we will be discussing about Lord Cornwallis. Again, very, very, very important Governor General. So thank you, all of you.